Welcome back to the show. I'm David Menzies, filling in for Ezra Levant. The trial of a family accused of killing 4 female relatives resumed today in Kingston, Ontario. On trial is Mohammed Shafia, his wife Tuba, and their eldest son Hamed. They are accused of killing 3 daughters and the first of Shafia's 2 wives. The bodies were found submerged in a car at the bottom of a canal in June 2009. Now, joining me now on location in Kingston is the scrawler, Joe Warmington of the Toronto Sun. Joe, you've been covering this trial fairly extensively. Why did the 3 members of the Shafia family allegedly want to kill their other family members in the first place?
Well, it goes back down to one of these things. It's an alleged honor killing. It's cultural. It's insanity. And you know what? If they prove it in a court here, it'll be considered reprehensible. Now, of course, they have a defense that none of this happened. The car just plunged over into the canal all its own. But the evidence that the Crown has presented is fairly extensive. So the jury has a decision to make here. It's something we don't see too often in Canada, and it's a good thing because it's pretty horrific, David.
Now, Joe, this trial was on hiatus for the holidays. What happened today in the courtroom?
Today is a stunning day. You've got the mother of the 3 slain children, who's also charged with first-degree murder in this. Her name is Tuba, and she's on the stand, and she's telling a story about her life. It started with marrying Mohammed Shafia when she's just a kid, maybe 17, 18 years old. And it's so confusing about which wife is number 1 and which wife is number 2. Now, you started this segment off by saying that the first wife is the one that died, and I heard in the court today that Tuba was the first wife, and this wife that died in the accident or the alleged murder was the second wife, and yet someone else said something else, so it's really confusing. But whatever it is, you've got a scenario painted by the Crown, David, that this is a polygamous marriage and one that was very steeped in Islamic tradition.
You know, and Joe, I think a lot of people looking at this trial find that part of it fascinating. I mean, this is not Saudi Arabia. This is Kingston, Ontario. And yet here's a polygamous marriage going on. Polygamy is not legal in Canada, of course. How did has that ever been addressed, how this polygamous marriage was carried out in the first place?
That's what's being outlined here in court today. And, you know, she explained this is how they do it in Afghanistan. And you know, before they were in Canada, Menzies, they were in places like Pakistan and Dubai and also Australia. So they moved around in this unit. The wife, Rona, who was murdered, she didn't come with them right away. She was away for 5 months as they worked out her paperwork. And the wife here today, Tuba, is talking about how close their relationship was and how they worked in unison as wives. They helped raise the children. It's stuff that you just can't imagine listening to, and it's happening right here in Kingston, Ontario, the original capital of Canada.
Indeed, and their own flesh and blood being murdered in such a way, allegedly. Joe, tell me, another issue that's come up since this trial has been going on is the whole idea of having a separate criminal code provision about honor killings. Do you think that's a good idea?
It's a disgrace that it's even talked about. I can't understand why the heck people want to sort of find some way to justify murder. Murder is murder. Homicide's homicide. Genocide is homicide. It's all the same thing. And you know what? I stand here, and there's 4 victims. There's 3 young women and their, you know, stepmother or what have you that aren't here, and we're here to represent them. There are no second-class citizens in Canada. And I'm not going to stand by and just sort of report to you that this happened, that happened. I know that there's allegations. I know people are, you know, entitled to their day in court, but I'm disgusted with what I'm hearing here today. I'm glad you asked me that question because I'm not in favor of any separate law when it comes to murder.
But, you know, Joe, I take you to task on that. I am of the belief that such a charge might be warranted, such a criminal code provision might be warranted because as a way of educating those justices that cut people from different cultures, different religions, some slack because of you know, what they grew up with. So it's not to say that this murder is any less heinous than any other type of first-degree murder, Joe, but almost as a method of educating those liberalized justices on the bench that no, culture and religion shouldn't have a role to play in dispensing justice.
You know what, I guess so, but I just got to tell you, I understand it very clearly that homicide is murder, and there's first degree, there's second degree, there's manslaughter. I don't think it needs to be any clearer than that. I know what you're saying, because there's a bunch of lefty judges that think that this is somehow a cultural experience, when it isn't. It's just murder. That's all it is. Premeditated murder, allegedly. And, you know, that's why we have the court. We'll, you know, I'm sure the jury will listen to the evidence and deliberate and render a verdict that's just. As for trying to, you know, find a fancy title for it, ethnic cleansing and all that crap that we heard in different wars, it's homicide, it's genocide, and it's murder in my mind.
Joe, in closing, if these 3 people are indeed found guilty, what do you think should happen?
I think there should be plane tickets purchased and they should be sent home, back to Afghanistan, and never to be seen again if that's what happens. I know that won't happen. I know that we'll spend $1 million each a year to have them housed, maybe perhaps down the street if it comes to that. Again, they're before the courts and they're innocent until proven guilty. But I tell you, David, I don't know what you think. I'd love to know what you think. But I'd send them on a plane so fast that you'd never see them again.
Oh, Joe, if I had my way, we'd still have capital punishment. There'd be no plane tickets to be purchased, my friend.
You know, right behind me there's a historic courthouse that goes back to the 1800s. This is a very historic town in Canada, and they actually did hang people in this court. There's people that are buried behind this courthouse for murder. So you know what? You've raised an excellent point. I mean, this is a very poignant place for you to mention that, because it's happened right here on these grounds.
Right. Well, the good old days in that regard, Joe, and we knew how to deal with people carrying out murder in the first degree. Joe, thank you so much for weighing in with this update on this horrible, horrible trial.